Hello, everyone. So it's almost 8 o'clock. We're just going to give it another 2 minutes or so to make sure people are joining. We've got people joining as I'm saying hello, so I'm just going to give that a minute to get them loaded up in there. And thanks for joining us this evening. I know sometimes it's difficult after a long day of work, but it's a nice way to end your day, to sit down and talk to some other professional colleagues about some really interesting topics like we're doing tonight. So thank you for joining us. And feel free to, if you want, use the chat if that's working for you, to say hello, or in the questions you can also say hello and tell us where you're from. I see a lot of people have done that already, so there we go. Feel free to say hello to everyone and where you're from. I'm actually from Ottawa, but I'm sure the rest of you are from different places across Canada, because I know we've got registrations from all over. So it'll be really interesting to see who we have with us tonight. Okay. The numbers just keep moving, so I'm just going to give it a second. I know, look at it. Holy cow. Well, it's a very interesting topic, and we certainly had a lot of people tell us how interested they were in learning more about this. So we're really happy that you're here with us tonight. So we're going to be starting our webinar soon, and the topic is anti-racism and belonging in outdoor play. And we're joined with a partner organization that we work with, that we're quite proud to have been doing things with for a long time now, actually, the Child and Nature Alliance of Canada. And we've got Lukeisha and Sinéad here with us tonight. And I wanted to give you a little hello from the Canadian Childcare Federation. My name is Robin McMillan, and I'm the Innovator of Projects, Programs, and Partnerships at the Canadian Childcare Federation. And we do run these webinars free for all of you, and afterwards you will be getting a certificate of attendance if you participate for the live event. So it's for people that are attending like yourselves at the live event. And those certificates, as well as a follow-up email with any additional information that might come out of the webinar, will be sent out within 2 days. So 2 days after the webinar, you'll be looking your email for those certificates and for a follow-up email from us, from the organizers. So we're really pleased to welcome everybody here today. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Suzanne, and I'm going to turn off my camera, and I will be back at the end of the webinar to say some closing remarks. So over to you, Suzanne.
Thank you, Robin. I'm Suzanne Schlechte. I'm the Project Engagement Officer at Canadian Childcare Federation, and I'd like to start us off by giving our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which the CCCF is located is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. We recognize all Indigenous people who were here before us, those who live with us now, and the 7 generations to come. As Indigenous people have done since time immemorial, we strive to be responsible stewards of the land and to respect the cultures, ceremonies, and traditions of all who call it home. As we open our hearts and minds to the past, we commit ourselves to working in a spirit of truth and reconciliation to make a better future for all. Today, these lands continue to be shared territory and are occupied by many diverse peoples from near and far. A treaty is an inheritance, a responsibility, and a relationship. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sinead and Lukeisha, and they're going to take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you, Robin, for having us here tonight. This is just a beginning of a very important conversation, and obviously 1 hour is not enough for this big conversation. My name is Lukeisha Andrews, and I'm joining you tonight from the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. And in this part, they now call it Ottawa, where I play, work, dance in the rain today. Yeah, so today was a really rainy day here in Ottawa, and I really love the snow, and it brought me sadness to see like the rain coming and washing away the snow before spring. But yeah, I live here with my one child, where we play on the unceded territory lands. Before that, I'm of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the land of the Colonial people, where I grew up on the lands there, swimming in the ocean, um, playing in banana fields, exploring coconut fields, and yeah, so I'm coming from a place where I'm grounded. I'm grounded in being outside. Sinead.
Um, yeah, I'm so glad you're all able to join us. My name is Sinead Rafferty, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm an early childhood educator. We also want to mention, if you haven't already, please share in the chat or take some moment to reflect whose land you're joining us from this evening. I'm joining today from Takaranto. Takaranto is a Mohawk word for Toronto, and it means where the trees are standing in the water. This is in Treaty 13, the Toronto Purchase. I was born and raised here. Our current treaty holders are the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the ravines and rivers that I have grown up with, and I currently spend a lot of time with my son too, and children that I've worked with. It's the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. So I mentioned I'm an early childhood educator. Lukeisha and I are both facilitators with the Child and Nature Alliance of Canada. Oh yeah, I'm a first generation Canadian settler. My parents come from Ireland, and yeah, I think a lot about how we have these connections in this land, in this Indigenous land, to other places in the world as well. And I've had the privilege of being raised here, and my parents came over here in the 70s. And I also have a lot of access to stories of relationship with land from where my family and ancestors come from. So it's just something I'd like to share. I think about yeah, just sharing a little bit about me and who I am, where I come from, and yeah, grateful to be in this conversation with Lukeisha tonight and all of you.
So before we begin this conversation, I just want to read. We just want to read just a snippet of this book. Brown is warm, black is bright, because sometimes, we have conversations with kids and we forget to tell them that black is something good. When we have conversation around black, it's like, oh, black, it's a funeral. Like you wear black to a funeral because it's sad. We refer to the black sheep, and you know how that goes. And like conversations around superstars are not black. The TV shows, the villains are always dressed in black. So just starting the conversation with children that black is something beautiful. And we are not going to read the entire book, but we'll just read like pages of the book. A faithful path to follow all the way home. Black is hope.
Get to the right page. Okay. Here's a beautiful image, and it says, brown is crisp.
Sorry.
And this one says, a river of sound rushing from rippling streams. Black is bright.
Here's one. Spray, splatter, to send a puddle flying. Black is strong.
Next slide, Robin.
Thank you. Just need to let me know. Sorry.
Yes, thank you so much for doing this, Robin.
No problem.
So just an overview of why we're here tonight, why we're having this conversation. The dynamics of power and privilege created by white supremacy culture have been the outdoor play and learning movement strive to serve mostly white, non-Indigenous and settler families across Turtle Island.
So what we'd like to share with you is a bit of the learning journey that CNAC has been on. So CNAC, and with this conversation that we're having tonight, we hope to unpack and spark some conversation about the whiteness of outdoor play and learning, because racism is alive and well in outdoor play and learning in Canada. Over the past several years, CNAC has been engaged in a process of learning about and seeking how to rectify the harms we've caused as a white settler-led organization working to support outdoor play and learning on stolen Indigenous land. We've come to understand that the authority that we claimed and was granted to us because of our whiteness perpetuated the erasure of Indigenous knowledges and expertise on their land. We've worked to revise our programs to center Indigenous voices and to repair, improve, and grow our relationships with Indigenous individuals, groups, and communities. And we base those in honesty, trust, and reciprocity. Over the past several years, we've also worked to diversify our team and interrogate the ways white supremacy culture is operating in our own organization. We work to revise our values and operations so that we might dismantle the barriers that perpetuate the perception and the current reality that the outdoors in general, and also forest and nature school in particular, are white spaces. As Lukeisha mentioned, the forest and nature school sector in Canada, which is with who Lukeisha and I work with the forest and nature school practitioners that we facilitate. The sector is predominantly white, and the outdoors in Canada is often perceived and experienced by white people and members of the global majority as a white space, a space where white people can take belonging and comfort and safety for granted, while those who are not white cannot. There was an example a number of years ago, you might have heard about it, the experience of Christian Cooper. Christian is a black birder and he was out bird watching in New York City Central Park, and he was accosted by a white woman who felt threatened to call the police when he had simply asked her to put her dog on a leash. And so racism in the outdoors is not only a problem in the United States, it is pervasive in Canada. And this webinar, hopes to increase awareness of these issues of racism, equity, and inclusion in outdoor play and learning across Canada. I just want to share a quote from, oh, sorry, go ahead, Lukeisha.
No, you go. Share the quote for us.
There was a quote from, and we'll share a little bit more about this study a little later, that the lack of, this is from Race and Nature in the City, a report by Jacqueline Scott and Mbika Tenetti, that the lack of people of color in nature organizations, we see this a lot in outdoor recreation, conservation sites, their social media feeds and publications reinforce the whiteness of space.
Yes, so we all know that the outdoor is perceived as a white space, and what we figure that a lot of people look at the outdoors, but we're narrowing it down to outdoor play and learning. When I first took the practitioner's course, I was the only I was the only person who you can look at and know that they're not white. We had Indigenous people in the circle, but yeah, so I was the only person that visibly, like, I'm a black person. I'm not a white person. And was I comfortable sharing my voice? No, because I didn't feel as if I I belong there. And I want every child to feel a sense of belonging whenever they're in the outdoors, to know that they all belong in outdoor play, no matter their background, their race, or where their family is coming from.
So moving
Next
to the
slide, Robin. So what to expect in our time together? You'll hear tons and tons of stories. Like if you're joining and you have been in circle with me before, you know that the way like I facilitate through stories. Like I believe that people relate more with to real stories rather than me bringing them like resources that you can go on the internet or pick up a book and read. People relate more to stories, and we will find like more action from storytelling. Um, Maybe you will feel a little bit of discomfort, but know that it's okay to feel uncomfortable. Sometimes we just need to sit in our discomfort for growth and to move forward. There'll be learning and we'll be unlearning some of the things tonight. There'll be time for reflections, and we hope that at the end of this 1 hour, this webinar, we will walk away with a call to action, like something that we can go back to our programs and implement in order to make outdoor play and learning safer or a braver space for all children.
we hope to also have some time at the end for questions. So please, if you have questions that come up throughout, please put them in the chat or the question. And we really hope we'll get a chance to get to them. If not, then hopefully we can find some way to follow up with some questions even after the webinar. So the next slide, we have a little reflection question. So we want to invite thinking about your comfort level about having conversations about race and children in your program. So just take some moment thinking about, perhaps a racist comment is made or something comes up related to race with children. Where do you land? And you don't have to put this in the chat either. We're just inviting you to think about how does that feel? Do you feel very comfortable? You feel prepared to meet these conversations? Somewhat comfortable? You're comfortable, kind of in between. 4 might be you're uncomfortable, and then 5 is very uncomfortable. That I don't feel I don't know how to have these or support these conversations.
Mm-hmm. And how does your comfort level change when you're considering conversation with your colleagues around race? What about children families? Like when families come to you and the conversation around race comes up, how does your tummy feel? Are the butterflies fluttering? How are you feeling? What about your own circle of friends? How comfortable are you when you're talking about race? Is it something that you shut down or something that you talk about?
So
Next slide. Oh,
So we want to explore a bit of these comfort zones. So you might have heard in different contexts talking about comfort zones. In this context, we're going to just share a little bit about what the different comfort zones mean. So, or zones, I should just say zones. So in the middle, you would have a comfort zone. That's a place where you feel pretty easygoing, relaxed. There's no, nothing is kind of like causing any kind of ruffles or feelings stirring. It's an easy, comfortable place. And then the opposite to that, on the outside, you'll see the panic zone. It might be also referred to as a danger zone or a place where you just, you know, that fight or flight kind of response kicks in. It's a very scary place. It can be overwhelming and stressful. And so oftentimes people might want to either shut down or go away. And then in the middle, you'll see the stretch zone. And there's other names for the stretch zone. It could be the challenge zone, maybe the learning zone. Those of us who are familiar with Lev Vygotsky's work around the zone of proximal development, where children are kind of moving and gaining skills. So it is in this stretch zone that you might also feel some discomfort as well. And that there's something new and challenging that you're meeting. And so we invite this consideration for conversations about race because you know, there is going to be discomfort in this, but we would also say that that's an important part of this work. If we stayed in our comfort zone and didn't hold time for these conversations, then there would be no learning and growing happening. I want to share that we want to share that there was you know, what often tends to happen, especially in white families, is that they feel that children are too young to have conversations about race. And it was a US-based study, but it can apply to, you know, children across North America, Turtle Island, that children as young as 9 months old can use race to categorize faces. By 3 months old, babies prefer faces from certain racial groups, and so the idea that oh, and by age 4, children in the U.S. associate whites with wealth and higher status, and so this is so if people think that, you know, children need to be 4 or 5 years old or older before we start having conversations, then we're kind of telling them that this is something that we don't talk about. You know, one of the quotes from the study says that, you know, toddlers can't do calculus, but does that mean we don't teach them how to count? So we need parents, especially white parents, to become comfortable, or at least sit in that discomfort to have more time with learning how to talk about race. So in the next slide, in the next few slides, we want to share and highlight some voices who are highlighting how racism shows up in the outdoors. This is Dr. Jacqueline L. Scott. Dr. Jacqueline L. Scott was also a co-author in a race and nature study we'll share again. She, especially in places like, there's a great article in the Narwhal where she wrote about uncovering the Black history of 10 Ontario rivers. And so a lot of what's missing in Canadian like landscapes or outdoor places are the untold stories of Canada's relationship with the transatlantic slave trade, and that you know, people of color aren't always newcomers. There's a long history of Black people in Canada as part of Canadian history. Next slide.
and
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, and the next slide. This research also done by Jacqueline L. Scott and Ambika Tunedi. They wrote about race and nature in the city and how much the outdoors is perceived as a white space. And I'll invite you to go and you can download this article and read about their research.
And there's a toolkit as well, which invites how to build relationships as well for one of the big things that comes up too is the idea that to have like nature-based experience, you have to be somewhere wild or you have to be in a forest. And so we really need to shift away from that, like that, you know, in downtown Toronto, you know, nature is around us all the time, and children are often the first to notice a puddle or a worm in the ground, and that idea that we have to be somewhere. So the idea of promoting urban nature is a really important piece to this too.
And the next slide, I'll highlight this very important work by the early childhood leisure experiences of African Nova Scotian children. And when we talk about outdoor play and learning, we always have to think about risky play. And this, the key findings of this is like, why aren't racialized people bringing their children outside to engage in risky play? And the fear of extra policing, the fear of extra policing from social security, and when they go to the hospitals, like what treatment are they getting from the nurses and doctors there because their child has a broken limb? So these are things that prevent families from engaging in risky play. So when we talk about risky play, we also have to talk about why aren't families engaging their children in outdoor risky play.
So we're going to move into sharing about white supremacy culture, and we're going to reference Timu Okun's work. They offer a great website on white supremacy culture and what it is. And this quote shares that we are all swimming in the waters of white supremacy culture. We are all navigating this culture regardless of our racial identity. So when essentially, like, white supremacy is the widespread ideology that normalizes white as kind of the precedence, I suppose. I'm trying to think of ways to describe it. That it becomes for those who are white, it becomes something that's invisible and taken for granted. The way Tia Okum will say that that it teaches, white supremacy culture teaches us that blackness is not only valueless but also dangerous and threatening. Lukeisha referred to that when a lot of like media or movies will reference the villains as being black, or you know, the dark shadow, or that language around dark and darkness or black. And so what this means is that white people can generally count on things like being protected from police rather than harassed by police. White people can be depicted as deserving sympathy within the media. This shows up a lot. You know, we see in the media all the time when there might be a white person who's gone missing, a white woman who's gone missing, and it's all over the news. But murdered and missing Indigenous women and Two-Spirit people is an ongoing issue in Canada. So white people can know that they are represented in history that might be shared in schools, or see themselves reflected in children's books or in different stories. In the next slide, we're going to share here some examples of so often when we hear talk about white supremacy culture, what often comes to mind, I think, for people immediately is that overt white supremacy. So something that is like happening where it's very overt and it's clearly racist. So like racist jokes and racial slurs, for example, hate crimes. And the way that white supremacy cultures or the way white supremacy culture operates is that it's more covert. And so I invite you to take a look at some of the examples that are showing up here. These would be considered socially acceptable, that kind of nobody interrupts it. So it happens, and it might not feel like it's racism happening, but it is. And so I know in my son's school right now, there's racism happening around jokes, so saying things like it's just a joke. And so the other thing that comes up, especially in the child and nature movement, is this idea of that white children are often viewed as having access or in the outdoors and are allowed to discover, whereas there's this narrative that for Black children or children of color, it's a way to fix them or help them be better, or like they're going to get opportunities and we're going to help. It's like from this deficit narrative so it's something that would be related to like the white savior complex, where outdoor programs that are led by white people are going to save to save Black or people of color communities.
And in the next slide, we will explore Sylvia Duckwood's Wheel of Power and Privilege. And I'll invite you to just look at the Wheel of Power and Privilege and ask yourself, where would I place myself looking at your skin tone, your form of education, your ability, your body size, wealth, the language you speak. Do you have an accent? Where would that put you? Your gender and citizenship. Like we are all educators and we hold space for children. And when we're holding space for children, we're also holding space for the families that's coming to our programs. So when you look at these families, you also have to look at the privilege you hold as an individual, holding space for the community you're serving. Next slide.
So this is something we often share. So when we talk about relationship with power in the courses that we facilitate, and the Wheel of Privilege, Power and Privilege that Lukeisha shared, there's systems in place, like systems of oppression, that keep that imbalance of power the way it is. And we would say that colonialism, cis hetero patriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy culture all work to kind of fit people into boxes and kind of keep them there and keep that dynamic of power out of balance. And it also reflects the intersectionality of how these dynamics of oppression show up as well. Like white supremacy culture is also the project of colonialism. Capitalism teaches us that profit is more important than people and the land, and that white people then are systematically more advantaged through that process. Sexism and heterosexism teaches us that white men are superior to women and gender binaries are normal. And while gender fluidity is threatening, for example.
Mm-hmm. And it like Sinead, I'm also thinking about like how do we how do we as people in leadership role, how do we accept feedback? Do we accept feedback gracefully? Do we listen, or do we just close it down because of white supremacy culture? Like we're all, it teaches us to be perfect, like perfectionism. Like no, I really can't take this feedback because my program is perfect the way it is. How are we working as a community to and listening to communities what they want? How can you improve your programs to better serve the community that you're serving?
Yeah, I think about how, oh yeah, maybe we'll go to the next slide actually.
Yeah, what are ways to share balance power? How are you sharing power with children in your program, or with your colleagues, or with your with BIPOC communities? With children, are we giving them space, the space they need to learn, or are we coming with a schedule? Like this is what we're going to do today, and this is how we're going to do it. Are we inviting child-led learning, inquiry-based learning in our programs? And how are we incorporating the child's voice in the program? How are we incorporating their culture, their language, the way they speak, the food they bring to the program? Are they afraid to open up their lunchbox because somebody is going to say something bad about how their food smells? Are they afraid to even speak because they have an accent? And like I've been here for over 10 years and I didn't change the way I speak because I intentionally want to speak the way I speak because this is who I am and I'm going to show up authentically. This is who I am and I'm not going to apologize for how I speak. And I want every child to know that they can show up with this power to bring themselves in program, to bring themselves to school just the way they are. Even with colleagues, like how are you sharing power, especially colleagues with who are racialized? How are you sharing power with them? Are you giving them a chance to voice their opinion in how the program is going? Or is it that this is how the program is and this is how it's supposed to be going? Are we including them in decision making, or is it just passed down to racialized people? How are we working with communities? Are we working with them, or we with them to build a program, or we're building the program for them? Because if you're building a program for them, it doesn't make any sense because you didn't do it with me, so it's not for me. We have to include communities, the communities we're serving. If we want to solve racialized children, we have to work with the communities. We have to know their story. Many times, children leave their homes and they're afraid to bring their real name because the teacher's mispronouncing my name every time. And I want to change my name. Why do you want to change your name? Because it's easier for the teacher to pronounce my name. So might as well I get something like Mary because it's easier. If we can learn the names of all the dinosaurs, obviously we can pronounce the names that children are coming from with.
Well, the next slide is a little visual that speaks to where we're at now, and the idea that, this often happens where, pieces of something are offered to support, but the barriers that we're going to chat about, you know, what would it mean to really offer that balance of power and so towards a place of liberation. So next slide.
And
oh, I keep
on the next slide, like barriers or how to interrupt white supremacy culture. When you talk about representation in the outdoors, one of the first thing I always think about is like representation in the first aid course. If we as outdoor educators, we're bringing children who has darker skin tone, are we equipped to bring them safely in the outdoors? How are we going to identify poison ivy in a darker skin tone? Or even hypothermia. How are we going to identify that? Are we taught how to do that? No. So how are we going to equip our staff to make the outdoors a better and safer space for darker skin tone children?
Other things to that are helpful is to think about ways to hear and learn about children's stories. So when children are like intake forms, where are there spaces or time offered to hearing and learning about the child's stories and their so the registration forms, the books that are offered in program 2, especially like there was a time when you could type in Google search children in nature, and all you would see would be like these really romantic photos of white children in fields with sunshine. And now it is changing, but the other thing is to avoid tokenizing this too. So you do see a lot of organizations who might include images that reflect diversity, but how diverse is it in the program? Some programs, depending on different regions, might have like a lot of forest nature schools are predominantly white children in program. So then I think of the question, Lukeisha, you taught me this question about how do I honor those who aren't there? Or how do you honor me when I'm not there? And so do you have materials that reflect the way people show up in the world and the way different families show up if your program is more white, for example? So how are you offering this in the program so that children know, and so that when they encounter people of color, it's not a surprise and not something that they're don't know how to respond to. There might be ways to, there's Black History Month in February, but how are we celebrating Black joy and Black futures throughout the year? Emancipation Month is in August. Emancipation Day is August 1st, and I know there's different programs in the States that offer, School of Action for Black Lives Matter, for example. So there's different ways to honor and celebrate programs.
Yeah, and Sinead, I'll also add that there shouldn't be just okay, every February we're going to take one day and honor Black families. It should be throughout the year. Like how am I seeing myself? How am I seeing myself in programs throughout the year as a child? I should be in your program and have a smile throughout the year, knowing that the the materials you're putting out, like, and I'll share a story. Like one day I was at in a school setting, and then there was this felt board, and I was so excited to walk with the felt board, and then I'm like there's the white skin tone person, different animals, the sunshine, different types of weather. And then I'm digging deep in the box. I'm like, where is my skin tone? And it wasn't present. Like the skin tone for me wasn't present. And I felt I felt sad about that. And then my I went to a child, like I wonder how a child will feel going through this box and not seeing themselves in this activity. So when we're working and building program materials, include seeing two dads as a family, include different skin tones, include somebody wearing a hijab, like include everything because it matters. Like when children see themselves in programming, they feel happy about it. And I'm not telling you this because resource say that. I'm telling you this from experience. I'm telling you this because of how it made me feel when that showed up for me. And I'm like, if it made me feel this way, think about the child that might be going through that box. I want to talk about language, like how are we highlighting different languages in our program? The language of the land where we're running program. Are we including the indigenous names for trees, animals, every being that we're sharing the space with? How are we including these languages?
So we'll move to the next slide. We want to share the work of Fikile Numalo and Corenda Downey and Nicole Franklin. They are offering work in thinking about and with Black ecologies in early childhood education. And so their work is around so there's some questions that are invited in this article as early childhood practitioners. And the questions include things like, how do my practices even inadvertently erase or marginalize Black children's ecologies or children's relationships with land? Another question includes, how might I pay attention to and restory Black children's ecological relationships in affirmative ways? And I think this goes back to what Jacqueline Scott and Mbika Tanetti shared around how we need to promote urban nature as a place that has value and meaning and offers rich connection with land. What are past, present, and future Black ecologies that I might engage through real or imaginary modalities? And creative expression. So what emerges for you in thinking about existing art and music and oral histories in early childhood curriculum that's in relation to Black ecologies and Black geographies, so Black relationship with land. There's a poem that Lukeisha will share from this article as well in the next slide. And yeah, again, it speaks to Black relationship with land and connections to the transatlantic slave trade.
Yeah, I'm also looking at the time, and I want us to go through mostly everything. So I'll just invite you to read that poem, and we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so these are some of the children resources that you can include in your library. And then the next slide is some adult resources. Sinead, you can, I know you want to expand on some of these.
Sure. Well, just in the one before, the one Our Skin, there's a first conversation series. I'll share the book here. But it offers a really, even though they're board books, this is an example of Our Skin. It's in the other slide, but it just offers opportunities to have conversations with children and entry points with children. So we really recommend that book, but also there's a series. So like talking about gender, first conversations about gender or love or grief. So it's a great one to check out. For these adult resources, the book Decolonizing Place in Early Childhood Education, that's a work by Fikile Namalo, and exploring the settler colonial history that existed in place and currently shows up in place, and questioning and exploring how anti-Blackness shows up in outdoor place-based learning. Me and White Supremacy is a book that I suggest for white folks. It's like a self-help book for white people to explore how white supremacy shows up and operates. And there's a book, White Woman to Everything You Already Know About Your Own Racism and How to Do Better. So it invites thinking about this. The authors, Regina Jackson and Sarah Rao, talk about how it's almost oppressive how white women need to keep up this persona of being nice, and how being nice can often operate in not in furthering racism. And a great book too is Rehearsals for Living by Robin Maynard, who's a Black abolitionist and does a lot of work on police-free schooling, and Leanne Betamosaki Simpson, who's Anishinaabe, and they have a conversation about the context of Canada, where we are now, how we got here, and possibilities for the future. And lastly, the 1619 project is there's also a docu-series on this, and it refers to lots of aspects of how race, music, and capitalism, fear, and justice is a part of how racism shows up in North America. I'm just giving really brief examples of these really meaningful books to support and have in your toolbox. And in the next slide, I think Lukeisha, Lukeisha offers an amazing program, and I will invite her to share because the stories that I hear about this program. So Lukeisha, I'll let you share a bit about Black in Nature.
Yeah, so in Ottawa we have a program, Black in Nature, and it's just a space for Black children to be themselves, to be in community. All the leaders are Black leaders. There's not many outdoor spaces that you sign up your child to go to, and the leaders are Black. They're mostly white leaders. So Black in Nature is just a space to provide that space for kids to be themselves, provide that brave space to be, just to be on the land. It's a space where we're fostering community, and if you go to the next slide, you'll see like different age groups, building community, building relationships. We don't separate the ages because we just want them to be leaders for the younger generation. So here you'll see them building. When this photo was taken, like it melted my heart because this is exactly what we wanted. We wanted the older ones to take the hands of the younger ones and enjoy the outdoors. And the next slide, you like we incorporate different cultures from the different Black communities that comes. So we'll highlight the Caribbean culture, we'll highlight the Nigerian culture, we'll highlight the Haitian culture, and we do it through music, food, and stories. And then on the next slide, like you'll see us here just cooking over the fire, just being in, like doing risky play. They're cooking in their mud kitchen, and it's just a space because sometimes children go to school and they're surrounded by so many questions. Why is your hair like that? Why is your skin tone like this? And it's just a space for them to just come and just be themselves without any judgment. And this question I'll leave with you tonight. Like, what is nature's lesson to us on how to coexist? Here you'll see nature, the water, the trees, the sky, the nearby city, the rocks, and they're all together and makes it really beautiful. If it was just cities, will we enjoy being outside? If it was just pine trees, will we enjoy being outside rather than seeing the different beings coming together? So nature is teaching us something and we need to listen.
So we want to invite like what might be one next step? Like we've had an hour together almost, and just to think about what might be one next step towards uplifting children's belonging in your program, where they feel that they can be their authentic selves, that they might show up who they are, and feel a sense of belonging and acceptance in your program and community. We'll also, we have a quote from Bell Hooks, but we'll leave that as well because I know that we're getting very close to 9. Maybe we could go to we have references, but we want to go to the last slide to share that, you know, this has been like an hour of time, but Lukeisha and CNAC has recently launched a course. And so it's an opportunity for a deeper dive into this conversation and discussion with 7 modules, and we invite you to scan for a link to this course and to find out more, because we hope that this is the start of continuing conversations, and we are both welcome to support any questions that come up. I think you might have our email addresses, so you can always reach out to us via emails too.
Great, well, thank you. Yeah, and you can always email Suzanne or myself, Robin, as well with questions, and we can forward them on if that's easier. And because I know some of you responded to the emails that were sent out when you registered, and that when you send it to webinars at CCCF email address, that comes to me, so or to our staff, so that's fine. We can make sure that those questions get to the right people for sure. But thank you very much. That was an amazing presentation, so much information. I'm going to slip out of this slide, but what we will do is we will pass this QR code out in a handout along in the follow-up email. So you'll be sure to get this information again. So we can include that. And I will
We have
just,
people asking if they can get the slides. Are we going to be sending out the slides? Yes?
Lukeisha, what do you think? I think we can do that.
Yeah, we
yeah,
can make it
we
a
could,
PDF and
yeah, we'll
send it.
PDF that. We could PDF that and then send it that out in a follow-up email if that's okay with you guys. We always ask your permission first because it's your materials, certainly, but we'd be happy to do that for you. That'd be great. I'm sure people would really appreciate that because there was so much information and some great resources that were available there.
We also had a question. Somebody was asking if we know of a resource for learning the Indigenous language pronunciation for things. And they're saying, like, you come across the words in the books, but if you're not confident about how they are to be pronounced, that can make it difficult.
Yeah, we can share that. And I think what I invite is just practicing, like make yourself vulnerable with just trying, and if someone corrects you, then be grateful for that opportunity to learn. So yeah, we can. I think we might have resources, but yeah. And
Another
it's
question was how to start teaching about racism to children. That's a big, big question.
Yeah, so it's something that we need to start at a really young age. Like just simply a storybook is a good introduction. Like you don't have to go in details, but starting the conversation at a really young age will make it more easier as you go along. Like the TV shows that they watch, when questions comes up about why does this person looks different? It's a good way to start the conversation as well, letting them know that the universe has so many people, and being white is just a little bit of what we are out there. So just introducing like different things that they're saying, the storybooks that they're reading, the play like the dollies that they're playing with, include also a different type dolly,
Mm-hmm.
and then the conversation will start from there. And it will be uncomfortable at first, but as an educator, as a parent, once you start the conversation, it will get more comfortable for you.
And I think it's often, I found back when I was doing frontline childcare, I used to find that the kids would come and ask a very simple, direct question. I mean, it almost takes you out of step a little bit because they're so direct about it. Well, why is your skin that color? And you're like, oh, why is it? And then you have to sort of, but just be honest, like just answer them simply as they're asking you. I mean, you don't have to overcomplicate things. You know, things can be quite simple too, because they just want the simple answer. They're not looking for some huge political, scientific kind of explanation about how things work in the world. They just want to kind of know why everybody's different color skin. How does that work? Why is it like that? So you can really bring it down to a level where it's just a simple answer. So, well, let's find that out. Let's look at a book. Let's go look at this. And you can learn with them and open it up to be having that as a learning opportunity that they're helping you with too. Say, well, why don't we find out about that? I'm not sure. And maybe there's different colors of skin that we don't know anything about. Let's look into that. You know, like open it up like that and not make it feel like it's a subject they can't talk to you about, but something that you want to learn about as well.
Yeah, and sometimes as educators we shut down questions like that, like don't talk about that. We don't dare talk about different skin tone, or we don't dare talk about somebody sitting in a wheelchair. But encourage that, because children are curious. They have curious minds and they want to know, and that's why questions are coming.
And one last question. It was asked, who's the author of Our Skin?
Oh, the authors are Megan Madison, Jessica Raleigh, and Isabel Roxas. So there's links to these in the slide deck that we'll share with you. The first conversation, and this one's about race, our skin. Yeah, and I noticed in the chat too, someone talked about similarities and differences too. This is a great book as well. We're the same, we're different with the Sesame Street characters. Yeah, so many. Yeah, there are lots of resources out there too, so we're happy to share those with you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us this evening, and thanks for giving us that great start to how we can change our practice tomorrow and really move forward in a very respectful way, in a way that we can all learn together, which is so great, an opportunity to learn with the kids too. So thank you very much to our friends at CNAC for joining us this evening, giving us this expert journey through this topic. And Suzanne, thank you very much for joining us. And what we will do is we will be sending out those certificates within 2 days, as well as a follow-up email with the slide deck, because we have been granted permission to do that. So we'll be doing that as well. And if there's any additional questions, please forward them to me, and I'll be happy to forward them on to our content experts as well. So we hope you'll join us for our next webinar coming up. We'll be sending out news about that through our social media channels and our e-blasts, and also on our website. We're building up a new page for webinars on our website, so you can look forward to seeing that. So thank you very much. Does anybody have any closing remarks you'd like to say, or good?
I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined. This is a conversation that we all need to have, especially outdoor educators. So thank you for joining us in this very important conversation. And thank you for having us, Robin and Suzanne.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So have a good evening, everyone, and we will be following up with you by email. Thank you.
I'm up here.
What do I get out of here?
Oh, I guess